Welcome, everyone. Today, we're going to dive into a really fascinating topic that's right at the heart of your AMC course, the ecological transition. We'll be working inside our theme, Environnement, cette mutation, to really get our heads around the psychology behind one of the biggest challenges we face. So let's start with a question that I'm sure many of us have thought about. Why on earth is it so difficult to give up our cars? We know they're not great for the planet, but still. This isn't just a personal thing, it's a huge societal puzzle, and figuring it out is a key part of what we do here in Anglais Monde Contemporain. To get to the bottom of this, we're going to analyze a university study all about urban mobility. This fits perfectly with our theme, Environnement en mutation, and even more specifically with our axis of study, from protecting nature to ecological transition. I want us to approach this like detectives, so our plan, as you can see, is to follow the clues. First, we'll look at the cold, hard evidence. Then we'll start uncovering the invisible forces, the things happening in our minds and in the very design of our cities that are stopping us from changing. We're essentially building a case file on this resistance. Okay, let's begin the investigation. And like any good inquiry, we have to start with the facts. Let's look at the data. What is the evidence telling us about just how big this problem really is? Wow, this first piece of evidence is pretty striking. When we say external costs, what we really mean are all the hidden costs to society. Things like air pollution, accidents, climate damage, stuff the driver doesn't pay for directly. And this chart shows that private cars are responsible for a massive 69% of those costs. That completely dwarfs everything else put together. Now, what's really interesting here is the history behind it. Just look at that dashed line for individual cars. Since the 1950s, it's just been climbing and climbing almost relentlessly. This shows us that our dependence on cars isn't some new thing. It's been woven into the fabric of our societies for over 70 years. And this slide just hammers the point home. It's such a great visual for the direct environmental impact. You can just see that huge cluster of dots for road traffic. It makes it crystal clear why the car is front and center for any serious policy on ecological transition. The scale is just undeniable. So this brings us to the crucial question for our analysis. If the data is so clear, if the evidence is so obvious, why don't we just change? And this is where our investigation goes deeper than just numbers and gets into the messy, complicated world of human psychology. To really get this, we need to compare two different models of how people behave. For a long time, policy was based on the idea of homo economicus, the idea that we're all rational and just make choices to save time and money. But the source we're looking at argues we're much more like homo sociologicus. We're social creatures, and our choices are deeply influenced by our culture, our values, and our habits. This quote really gets to the heart of it. A car isn't just a metal box that gets you from A to B, it's a powerful cultural symbol. And look at those words, spatial and social freedom. That connects directly to one of our key AMC motions, the idea of freedom and how it's represented. It's not just about getting around, it's about an entire idea of independence. So these are the psychological roadblocks on an individual level. You've got the symbolic value we just talked about. Then there are our core values, things we deeply care about, like peace, quiet, and privacy, which we often link to living in the suburbs with a car. Then there's the incredible power of habit. Driving just becomes automatic, something we don't even think about. And finally, our residential aspirations, that cultural dream of a house with a garden, a dream that pretty much requires a car. Okay, but it doesn't just stop in our heads. Let's zoom out to the next level of our investigation. Because, our individual choices are never made in a bubble. They're massively shaped by the world we live in. This map gives us a perfect picture of what that means. You can literally see the dense city centers in red, and then all the sprawl around them. The way our towns and cities are physically laid out creates car dependency. If you live way out in a suburb, choosing not to drive might not even be a real choice. And this brings us to a super important concept for your analysis: path dependency. All it means is that decisions made in the past, like building our cities around roads and motorways back in the 50s and 60s, they lock us into a certain path. It makes it incredibly hard and expensive to change direction now, even if we know there are better ways to do things. So these are the huge systemic barriers, the macro resistances. Our infrastructure is literally built for cars. Urban sprawl means everything is too far apart to walk or cycle. Public transport often doesn't work for real, complicated lives. And finally, this key idea, climate delay. That's when institutions avoid taking real action. And often, they do it by pushing all the responsibility onto us as individuals. This should sound familiar. It connects directly to our study of Greta Thunberg. Her "How dare you" speech was a fiery attack on this exact thing, a young generation confronting the power structures that keep delaying real change.
So, we've gathered our evidence from the psychology of the individual all the way up to the design of our cities. Now for the really important part. How do you take all this complex information and turn it into a clear, powerful analysis for your baccalaureate exam?
The key takeaway here, the central argument you need to build, is that you can't just blame individuals and you can't just blame the system. They actually reinforce each other. Our cultural dream of a house in the suburbs fuels urban sprawl, and that sprawl makes a car an absolute necessity, which in turn reinforces how important the car is in our culture. It's a powerful cycle.
Okay, now let's practice a skill. Check out this powerful quote from a text cited in our source. In your oral exam, you'll need to be able to analyze something like this on the spot. So how would you do it? How does it connect all our themes together? Let's break down a method.
Here is a simple but incredibly effective method you can use every single time. Point, evidence, analysis. It's not easy. First, you state the main point. Second, you pick out specific words from the text as your evidence. And third, you analyze what that evidence actually means and connect it to the bigger picture. Right, let's try it. The point is that we need to shift our thinking from being individual shoppers to being active citizens. The evidence? Look at those key phrases. Not primarily as consumers versus citizens in a participatory democracy. And the analysis? This contrast gets right to the heart of the tension we've been talking about between our personal choices and the big systems, suggesting that real change has to be political and collective. See? Using this structure makes your analysis sharp, clear, and well-supported.
Okay, so let's wrap up our investigation and open the door to some final thoughts.
So, to answer our big question, why is it so hard to give up our cars? We've discovered this incredibly complex web of reasons. We've gone from data to psychology, from our personal habits to the way our cities are planned. And this really shows us the scale of the challenge for a successful ecological transition. But it also shows us all the different places we need to act. And this leaves us with a final question to think about. This whole deep dive on the car, it's really a model for critical thinking. It encourages us to connect our own choices to these bigger, often invisible systems. And that skill, the ability to take an issue apart from the individual level to the systemic, is one of the most important things you'll learn in Anglais Monde Contemporain, and honestly, one of the most vital for understanding the world we live in today.